introduce these three women and hear about three entrepreneurs that are actually creating something that can save people's lives and change people's lives. So Ashley Zender, Katie Grabick, and Linda Goodman of Fauna Bio. So I'd love to invite each of you to just say a little bit about yourself and I guess just why you're part of Fauna Bio.
Hello. Great. Okay. I'm Ashley Zender. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Fauna Bio. And my background is as a veterinarian. So I do non-traditional species. So I look at birds, small mammals, reptiles, and that was my clinical specialization. I did a cancer biology PhD at Stanford, which is how I ended up meeting these guys eventually, because I was interested in differences in cancer among different species and how that could inform human health. So I've always had a translational interest. How can we use different animal models to improve translation into human therapeutics? And ended up doing a postdoc in the Bustamante lab at Stanford, which is literally where I met these guys, working at the interface of veterinary clinical records and human medical data and trying to bridge that gap for translational research. And that's, like I said, where I met these guys.
And I'm Katie Grabeck, and I have, my background is actually in hibernation biology, and I got into this when I was actually starting my PhD. Where I started was at the University of Colorado and Anschutz Medical Campus, and actually was going into human medical genetics. That's the name of what it says I have a PhD in. But in the first year when I was rotating in the labs, I rotated in a lab that was studying hibernation. And I never really realized that mammals, because you think of mammals as being warm-blooded, that there's these mammals that actually can go down to freezing in body temperature. And then they stay like that for a large portion of their year. They won't eat for 6 to 9 months of the year. They won't drink. They don't have any muscle atrophy. Like if we laid in bed for a couple of weeks, we would have. So they were protected from the damage that would occur, which would actually be quite lethal to us. So that got me hooked. I was just like, how could mammals do this? And then there was also this translational aspect, like they have to protect their brain from freezing, and so there's the translational aspect towards stroke. And so in my PhD, I started studying the genetics and looking at gene expression and hibernation. And the idea is that since they're mammals, and there's so many different mammals that can hibernate, it's not really that there's these special squirrel genes or special bear genes. It's actually they're just common shared genes that we as humans have, and they're just using them differently. So the idea is then to understand what those genes are and then modify them in humans. And so that got me hooked. I finished my PhD in 2014, and then I was giving a talk about my research at a human genetics conference, actually, and I met my postdoctoral advisor, Carlos Bustamante, and he thought that it was just great work, and he said, why don't you come out to Stanford and do a postdoc in my lab? So I brought hibernation with me to Stanford and met Ashley and Linda while I was there.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Linda. So I'm in Fauna Bio because I'm very excited about biology and about data science and combining these two things in order to cure human diseases. Let's see, when I started my undergraduate, it was actually, I'm originally from California, so I did my undergrad at UC San Diego. This was around the time that the human genome was coming out. And so I knew that in order to be a good biologist, I also had to be a good computer scientist because there was going to be all this data coming out. So I took a lot of computer science classes and did a master's in computational biology. And then I went back and got a PhD in genetics and genomics studying humans and disease genes, essentially, in humans, and how we know which genes are contributing to diseases. But around the time that I was finishing my PhD is when we really started to sequence a lot of mammal genomes. And this was really exciting because we can actually tell that the best way to determine if a gene is functional in humans is if it's very conserved in mammals. And this makes a lot of sense because if something hasn't been mutating, hasn't been accumulating mutations for 100 million years, it's probably doing something really important. And so this really opened up my eyes to how important it was to really pay attention to animals and what can we learn from them that will tell us something about human health. And then I met these guys at Stanford, and it really seemed like this would be a great company to start.
Thank you so much for sharing your backgrounds and also how you met. So I guess I want to even just go a layer deeper. And before you decided to become a PhD, before you began pursuing science, how were you oriented in terms of when you were younger? What did you think you wanted to do in the world? And then how does what you're doing now relate to your sense of why you're here? Like, what's your purpose? If you want to get into that big, deep question.
So when I was younger, like talking like 6 or 7, I think I wanted to be a pet shop owner. And my mom was like, aim a little higher.
I love it.
So then it became okay, veterinarian. So I mean, I was going to be a veterinarian since
Her
I was
first business
8.
coach, right?
Yeah, my mom was like, let's try a little harder. And my parents always told me, do whatever you love, but whatever you do, do it the best that you can. Like, take it as far as you can. And so that was do a veterinary degree, but then do a residency, get specialized. In my case, it ended up being do a PhD in something that was really important to me. Like, really, really don't just be a shop in the corner, like really kind of learn as much as you can and keep learning. And so that was really the impetus to really just keep pushing that boundary as far as I could. And that really ended up sort of being, well, how do we use this whole body of knowledge in animal diseases to really start to translate to human health? And so it's kind of pushing that boundary between veterinary and human medicine is really where the field needs to go. And that's why I sort of gravitated toward how can we get the whole field moving in that direction, because there's really a big chasm between veterinary and human medicine, and that's really what I'm trying to address now. So that's really kind of where that started, was a very long time ago.
I love how you just lit up when you shared that. Did you guys feel that energy when she just shared that? I love that.
Yeah, so when I was a kid, when I was 5 years old, my plan was to fell in love with archaeology and anthropology, and I really wanted to be an archaeologist for a good portion of my life. I thought I was going to I really wanted to make discoveries. That was probably the core value, and I actually didn't like science when I was in school. That was probably my least favorite subject. I thought it was just about memorizing things in a book, because that's what my science classes were. But I did like being outdoors a lot, and I played outside. And so my dad would always tell me, oh, you're a natural scientist because you're always outside studying things. And I'm like, I'm not a scientist. I hate science. But I finally got to undergrad. I went in as an archaeology major, and I loved physical anthropology because of the science aspect. And then I got to archaeology, and it was all about like building these little squares and then cataloging things in the dirt. And I was like, oh, wait, there's no way I could do this. So I happened to be taking a biology course, and I just started getting hooked on biology. I finally had like a science course that was more about the unknowns in biology and less about memorizing things. And I went, wait, there's all these things that we don't know, and you can make discoveries. And that just kind of hooked me, was the whole idea of doing research and making discoveries. And so I changed my major to biology and just stuck with it since then. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. What a fun story.
So I think I always wanted to be a scientist. I think it was very, I don't want to say indoctrinated in our house, but it was the house that I grew up in was very pro science. We had Friday night science experiments even when I was a child. Yeah, it's a bit intense. And then I'm kind of similar to Katie in the sense that when I was a kid, lots of kids want to be astronauts. I really did, but I went to space camp twice. So I really loved that. I think many people who knew me back then would have thought that I'd be a veterinarian because I really loved animals and science. But I think when I got to college, I also realized that I really liked math a lot, and I took an evolutionary biology class that I absolutely loved. And so after that, it was all about biology and statistics and linking those.
Cool. Thank you, ladies. So you're 3 female founders, obviously, and you all 3 are PhDs. And you are being backed by a female VC, which is somewhat unusual in the startup space. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your success story and how did you get this person to invest in you?
Yeah, that is a very serendipitous story, actually. Our startup funding came through Laura Deming's Age 1 Accelerator, which we didn't know existed. I met Laura Deming. She came to Stanford to give a talk in one of the bioinformatics seminar courses. And the talk was all about the reason why she started Longevity Fund, which really she wanted to back companies that were deep into science, were studying aging, and really wanted to differentiate themselves from a lot of VCs whose who back biotech companies but are not into the science, and that's the vast majority of them. And I can speak from it. Laura is deep into the science. I mean, you email her at 2 a.m, she's reading papers. And so I really liked and she just felt that there were not enough companies being given the chance to make a difference in the space and really wanted to get in the space. And she was one of the first VCs to raise a fund for aging, and now she's in the second fund. So I had actually emailed her following that. I had gone just for a seminar serendipitously, and I had emailed her really out of hey, my background's in non-model organisms. A lot of these species, like naked mole rats and whatnot, are used to study aging. We should just connect because I have a background in these sort of non-traditional species. And we had been talking about starting a company around these ideas. We were thinking about going to Stanford StartX and some of the other internal accelerators. And she emailed back, and we talked on the phone, and she was like, hey, we're having an accelerator program. Why don't you guys apply? And we're like, yes, that would be lovely. So we applied, and we interviewed with her again, and interviewed with the advisor, Elad Gill, who's on the advises the companies. They offered us a spot in the accelerator, but it was just sort of one of these very serendipitous. We were thinking about starting a company, and they were launching an accelerator that related to our space, and it worked out. Just that's how that worked out. So then subsequent to that, we've been working on raising a seed round, which should close this week, for follow-on funding. That's not just Longevity Fund, but other VCs as well. So,
Nice. Well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Did you want to add anything to that, ladies? No? Yeah, go ahead.
So you mentioned that we're all women, which we didn't exactly touch on, but a little bit. And I think it's not something that we focus on too much, but we all get along really well, and it's possible that relates. But I just wanted to say it's funny, one of the conversations we had when we first started thinking about hiring was, our first few hires can't all be women, or then we're going to be the woman company. So we had to, also be conscious about diversity in our company as well.
Yeah, so actually, that is going to have me skip a question, and then I'll go back, which is, from where you are now, how are you growing as an organization, as a company? Are you hiring, and what is the plan for 2019 in terms of building a team?
Yeah, so really the key hires we're looking at for 2019 is really someone to set up and run the wet lab experiments that we need done. Of the three of us, I've probably done more molecular biology, and I'm not a great bench scientist. So we need somebody to help translate the findings that we're discovering from the data that Linda and Katie are working on, and really validate those proof of concept. So that's the first hire that we have hired that's going to start first week in January, is a postdoc from Berkeley who's going to run our wet lab. And then we're hiring another computational biologist. Do you want to talk about the data scientist that you're interviewing for, or going to be interviewing?
Yes. So we are very much a data-centric company, and we've spent a lot of time over the past several months getting lots of data, RNA-seq data, TAC-seq data, all sorts of exciting data, and we've been trying to analyze it all ourselves. And I think we've been realizing that running the business, trying to do all the analysis yourself, is just there aren't enough hours in the day. So we're trying to hire somebody right now, actually, to do part of that.
Nice. So yeah, you already kind of touched upon this, but I think a natural follow-up question is, in terms of the non-science aspects of running a business, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced as founders, and where are the areas that you're needing to stretch and grow now as business owners?
I think at first, when we first got our bank account, I realized, I was like, I don't even know how to keep receipts or do any of the accounting. I've never done accounting. And then we had we wanted to spend, I think, $60,000 in sequencing, and they're like, well, we need a purchase order. I'm like, purchase order? Okay, how do I do that? so I was like, wait a second. Okay, I think we need to hire there's companies that'll do this for us. So that was probably the first challenge.
I mean, the nice thing about A, being an accelerator, and B, being in the Bay Area, is that there are a lot of other companies that help small startups deal with these technical challenges without me having to spend all my time making sure that our payroll taxes get paid. So I set up everything initially, and I ran our first few payrolls. Turns out I ran them wrong, actually. But then we hired, we got paid, but it wasn't accounted correctly. So which was fun. And that I was like, oh, I just printed my own paycheck, and then I watched the balance go down in our account at the same time. Like, oh, that was really depressing. Like, it was like anyway, so we hired a small HR accounting firm that like manages all of that and is helping us because we need to start medical insurance for our hire in January. So getting some medical insurance started and thinking about a 401k and things like that. But there are small companies that will be a virtual lab manager for you. So we work with a company that helps us set up all of our accounts with Fisher and Sigma and the liquid nitrogen delivery we're getting tomorrow, and helping us buy a big -80 freezer we're moving a biobank from UC Denver, so we need a freezer, and how do we do that? So, but there are companies that will, for a very reasonable fee, extend your capabilities so you do not have to spend your time on the phone with Sigma sorting out purchase orders.
So smart advice, right? To
Yeah.
other entrepreneurs, don't try to do things that
It's
you
like
don't know how
your
to do.
time
Find
is-
someone that
your
knows how to
time
do
is
it.
more
Pay them to
valuable.
do it right.
Yeah, your time is much more valuable than spending your time doing that. If you add up the annual cost, I mean, the cost for one of these services is way less than you'd pay a person to do that.
Absolutely, and then
So.
thinking about the opportunity cost of your time in the lab, figuring things out and finding a solution versus figuring out how to do payroll,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So just
Screwing it up, as it turns out.
So speaking of this account where you actually had money, right? Because you got an investor.
Yes, we actually do have money in account, yes.
So that's the part that I think a lot of people want to know about and get
Yeah.
excited about when they think about launching a business.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get that first round of funding, and what did it take?
The accelerator that we got accepted into came with a fairly large chunk of money. So it was actually one of the more generous accelerators in the Bay. So they actually give you $500,000. It's, like I said, very generous.
So if you're
for
wondering
an
what
accelerator.
field you
Yeah.
should be in,
Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, it's actually a very generous accelerator. And particularly for the amount of equity they take for that, it's actually very reasonable. And so we started out, and we've used a little less than half of that since we started. So we still have a big chunk of that.
and how long has that been now in time, just in terms of time
Beginning
frame?
of June, so 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, it's only the three of us, and then we ran some big sequencing projects, but otherwise we've kept it pretty lean. And then we're closing a $3.5 million seed round. So, like I said, this week.
Nice.
So that will keep us going for at least 18 months. But we're planning-
Congratulations.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exciting.
So, yes, we have a fairly decent bank account.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could talk about like, so if we talk about the start of Fauna, I think the start of Fauna, the idea in, where at least I think you guys were talking about this company before I was.
There were a lot of iterations.
There were a lot of iterations, but the three of us really started sitting down and planning our business, and then the time from that time until we got accepted in the accelerator, it was like a month. I mean, it was
very quick.
it happened
Wow.
so quick, and so then, then raising our second seed round took a while. That kind of dragged out. So the first time it was really easy, and we're like, oh, this will be awesome, and then the second time it took a little bit longer. So.
Yeah, it was basically like, you're in, you need to start a company in 3 weeks. And so we literally had to just figure out how to incorporate and get the advisors on board and everything else in
Yeah.
like 3 weeks. So that was get a lawyer and everything else in 3 weeks. And then,
Yeah.
so that was a bit of a mad scramble. But
So this was fast and
Fast,
hard.
very fast.
And I'm guessing in terms of being fast and hard, you all have had to grow and up level as leaders fast and hard to
for
keep up
sure.
with that. And so from where you sit now in terms of where you've come from, where you are now, and you reflect back, are there things that you think back and say, wow, I wish I had known it was going to be like that, or if I only knew then, or has anything surprised you about this journey from where you sit now?
I think that we all have become much better saleswomen. So we all came from academic disciplines where, we were raised in this academic environment where professors will say, oh, be very careful not to overspeak, don't oversell that, say perhaps this, maybe that. And that doesn't work quite as well if you're trying to pitch to VCs. So I think we became much better and more confident in terms of stating our science, like this is what's going to happen, and this is how we're going to make this work, this is how we're going to make this drug. I think we all got way better at that. The other thing that I wish I knew is that when VCs smile and say, this is amazing, and I'm so interested, and I'm going to talk to you tomorrow, not necessarily. They will all say that.
That's like the
Some of them
California
will call you
VCs,
back,
right?
and some of them won't. Yep.
I had a couple that actually I really appreciated that we talked. We had a great conversation. They're like, look, this is really just outside of my space. Like, I'm not going to get there. Like, we're not going to do it. I'm like, thank you. Like, thank you for just being honest and saying this isn't going to happen because you've saved so much of my time.
Yeah.
Like,
And
we can
full
go have coffee and something later. We can still be friends. But, like, it's the people that are like, oh, this is great. I love you. I'll call you in a week. This is great. And then ghost you for 2 weeks. I have no patience for that.
Yeah.
It really drives me crazy. And I think what Laura told us that really made sense is like their job is to make people think that they like you. Like that is literally the job. So you just have to go into it with that mindset that like, of
Yeah.
course they're all going to think that you love them because they want to keep their options open.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just the way that is. What lessons, things you wish you had known we talked about earlier?
I mean, I guess I didn't realize how scrappy you have to be and how quick things change and how quick you have to drop things if they aren't working. And I didn't realize how much like we'd just be changing things. And especially when we first started and we were just really developing our business model. And I mean, it was like every week we were changing what we were doing. And it was kind of like, well, what's our identity as a company? And sometimes it was just so rapid. And then the other thing I wish I had known was just to trust my gut a little bit more too. There were some points where we were just so new and we had never done a business, and so we were taking all this advice from all these people, and then sometimes it just kind of went against what I thought was right. And then in hindsight, I was like, I should have just trusted my gut and did that instead.
Yeah, I love that.
It's very easy to take advice from people. At the same time, you do have like you know what's right, and so you have to just take everything with a grain of salt. Everybody's got different perspectives, and so I think part of it is being an accelerator program. It's an accelerator program, so they're pushing you on purpose, which is fine. But you also don't want to do things that later you have to redo because you did it too fast and did it the wrong way. That doesn't actually save time in the end. So I think that's useful. But.
Awesome lessons that you shared there. I love the 3 different perspectives on how you've had to grow. So now I want to kind of project out to you're getting this next round of funding. You're going to find some amazing solution, right, to a health crisis issue. And you're going to blow up. You're going to start generating tons of revenue. You're going to grow. Your business is going to scale. You're going to build a team. You're going to have probably offices in other states and other countries. So when you think about that vision for where you're headed, how do you think you're going to need to adapt and evolve yourself as a leader, as a female founder, to keep pace with that when you get there? Because you're getting there. You're well on your way. Yeah.
I think the main thing, and I think we've even started with this first hire, is really hiring people who are independent and are smart and can manage themselves. I mean, none of us like to be micromanaged or like to be micromanagers. And so I think from the beginning, you want to bring people who are going to be responsible for their work and who can manage people, and so that you can scale, because you can't be everywhere. And so even with just the 3 and soon to be 4 of us, I can't micromanage what everybody is doing because that doesn't help anybody. And so you need to bring on people from the very beginning who you can say, okay, here's what we need you to do it, and then like we can give you whatever feedback whenever you need to do, but like own that. And I think that's how you can actually build and scale things, is if you bring on people who have that sort of entrepreneurial spirit, who can take ownership of something and really move it forward. And then just check in and make sure everybody's synchronized. But everybody kind of, you don't want people who are just kind of waiting there for you to tell them what to do. Like that's just a roadblock at some point. So what would you guys have thought about that?
The other thing I think it's we're working to set our company culture. I know we're small, but I really think it's important that we have people that come on board that also share our values, and that we build a good company and we do good things in the world. That even when we're small, we make sure we're conscientious of doing good things, and not saying, someday when we have this much funding, then we'll go and change our values. It's like, no, our values start right now. So our core values right now are, having a work-life balance. Like Ashley and I both have kids, and so that's important that we spend time with our family, and of course Linda's married too, so her family too. But husband, so
that guy.
And then the other thing that all 3 of us have agreed. We've all gone through our PhD and postdoc, and you don't go into this because of the money. So we're passionate about what we're doing, and we want to have people that come on board that are also passionate about what they're doing, and not just showing up because it's a paycheck. So, which I know will be a little bit harder when we scale, but trying to get people that are motivated.
More of a commitment culture.
I'll just add a little bit in that it's all about being very organized. I think we were pretty organized, even starting the accelerator, and I think all of us have become even more so. Yes. Yes. So I think, when we were PhD students and postdocs, it'd be, I'm doing these 3 or 4 different analyses and I have a couple meetings that I need to schedule. But now it's that times 20 and more varied tasks. And I imagine, as you're saying, we expand to other branches, other states, other countries, it's only going to become more so. And so just figuring out the ways that we can organize ourselves individually and how we can effectively work together as a team has been a learning process that I think we're still getting better at.
I love it. I love the perspectives that you guys shared, and this perspective on life-work balance. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But doing what you're doing it takes a set of balls to do this, might I say, just because we're ladies, we can still use that term. And it's not a traditional route, right? And it's not this stable, cushy, institutional job where you're a researcher or you're a scientist, you're a professor, and you have steady paychecks. So did any of you depart from a mindset of entrepreneurial belief or this idea of taking a risk? Is that something you ever thought about before? How did you actually decide to jump off the cliff and do this?
I think that it can sound really risky just in the abstract of thinking I'm going to start a company and I'm going to leave a stable job. But I think just knowing what we were going to do, it didn't sound so risky to me. It sounded like a great idea. It sounded like the job that I always would have wanted. And I think also, I think it's maybe riskier for some people who are coming from, say, a large industry job that they've been in for a long time. They know exactly what they're doing. They have a big, healthy paycheck. But we were sort of all getting our careers started. We were postdocs, staff scientists, and this came with more freedom to creatively do the science we were really interested in, that we could build together. And honestly, it came with a bigger paycheck than we had when we were postdocs. So one might say this was not really that risky for us.
Yeah, I think the part about, I was originally thinking of going into academia, and I think I never really committed either way of being industry or academia. I really liked doing research, but I didn't really like the environment in academia, and I just thought it was just too hyper competitive, and there were just a lot of things that just kind of made me feel depressed about being there. I think maybe the government funding, there was never enough money, and it was just, and always kind of, it was like you were a one-man show, and if you would size yourself up to other people's publications, and you always just kind of felt depressed about how you were doing, and so I was like, well, I don't want to give up hibernation, and I don't want to give up my research, but then I have to go into this system that I don't really like, and then I'd have to hire postdocs, and I didn't even like being a postdoc myself, and that would keep me up at night, and I was like, I would be contributing to a system I didn't actually like, and so this was actually not, I was like, this is kind of the job I always wanted if I could do that. It's like I could build my own company and do what I want to do and do good in the world, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, we're in a bit of a unique situation in that all of our academic careers are somewhat non-traditional. We're in somewhat non-traditional areas, and so like I'm right at the forefront of veterinary and human medicine, so you end up falling in cracks when you're right at the forefront of things. So you don't quite fit this job, you don't quite fit in this job, and I think all of us are in areas where it's not always easy to get an academic job, or it's not easy to get grants because you're in an area that's kind of in between your traditional funding areas. And so for us, the academic track was definitely not a sure thing. We saw a lot of our colleagues struggling in academia to get funding, to get the grants. Moving into small teaching universities because they couldn't get good faculty jobs or having to move to Iowa or something. So for us, the academic route is not the safe and proven route. And all of us have, like I said, slightly non-traditional backgrounds, and it's thinking about this company is actually one of the few things that actually uses all the pieces of all of our resumes in a productive way. So this is actually like the best thing we could be doing with all of our backgrounds. So for us, it actually made a lot more sense than trying to sort of duke it out in academia. And the thing about academia, the metric is papers, right? And it's first author papers. And I don't care if I'm first author on a paper. I just want to do good work. And if I'm second author, but the paper's awesome and it means something, that I don't care. Like I can't make myself care about that as a metric. I care if something is meaningful and impactful. And then if you work in a group like this, it doesn't matter if we get a first author paper with all three of us. Who cares? The point is that you're making progress. However, whoever needs to do the work to get it done, does the work and gets it done. And that's much more how I like to work, but that is not an academic mindset. Like, you're supposed to fight for that first author spot, and I just never cared enough to do that, which is not great for thinking about a long-term career in academia. It's not the right attitude to have. So for us, this actually is a safer option than the academic option.
Yeah, but it sounds like all three of you deviated from the blueprint.
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
where the path was headed. So if you could give advice to other young grads with PhDs or just in the midst of their studies in perhaps STEM fields that are already thinking at the daunting road ahead about, like, how do I find work? What's my career stability? And if they're thinking about starting a business, what advice or encouragement could you give people that are considering this path?
I think just keep your options open. I think it's one of those things where you don't get opportunities like the one we got without just putting your foot out there. Like, we wouldn't have gotten this opportunity if I hadn't just cold emailed Laura and be like, hey, sounds like our paths overlap. We should connect and chat. So it's one of those things that things do happen serendipitously, but they happen serendipitously because you put yourself out there.
That's right.
And so you have to put yourself out there and go to events, and you may go to 5 events and you finally meet one person that ends up changing your career, but you don't know that unless you go to those 5 networking events. So you really do have to get yourself out there and talk to people. Otherwise, you won't know what opportunities there are.
That is a gem of advice right there, let me tell you.
Yeah, I think also just, I mean, it's great just being in the Bay Area. Being in Denver, I didn't even know you could start a company. I just thought you either had 2 routes. Either you were going to work for a company developing assays, like, which sounded boring, or going into academia and doing the research you wanted to do. And it just kind of was, I mean, it's just kind of a problem, I think, when you're in your PhD program, is that all the professors know academia. And so that's kind of the path they push you towards, even if it's not a good fit for you. And so it probably would have helped if I had gone to more of these events. Even in Denver, I think they have a startup series now. But if I had, like, explored my career options a little bit more, but I think I was just kind of pushed down this academic path, and I started it in my postdoc. I just started questioning, like, I don't really like this, and I really struggled. There was a point where I really struggled, like, what am I going to do with my career? Because I don't really like academia, but I really like my research, and so I did struggle for a bit, and so. I think, just going out and, like, learning about other career options really helps. So.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Just to quickly second what Katie said, is that I think it's really important to get out of the university. Looking back, what I wish I'd done is maybe done a couple internships at startups or, say, large biotech firms, just to get an idea about what it would be like to have one of those jobs. Because all you really do observe being in college are, oh, there's a postdoc, there's a professor, I guess those are the things that I could do. And you don't have an idea of what the other careers are going to be like.
Yeah, awesome. That's such good advice, ladies. So I think the last question I'm going to ask before I put it over to the audience is, so you talked a little bit about coming back to California yourself, but why here? Why downtown Berkeley? Why co-working with Wisdom? And when you do get this next round of funding and you do explode, are you going to stay in the East Bay and become a sustainable and part of this East Bay culture here that's growing right now? So what are your thoughts on?
I think there are a lot of reasons that we're here. So part of it is that Berkeley in general, and specifically Wisdom, is just a very tranquil space. Where we came from before, we were in some lab space in San Francisco. I also live in San Francisco. There's a lot of construction going on in San Francisco right now. It's, right next to where I live, where I worked, and I realized that I was actually hearing jackhammering in my dreams, because it's very sad, but this is true. So, they would start kind of early right next to my house where I'd wake up. And then right outside of where our lab space was in San Francisco, they were also jackhammering, doing some work under the street.
To the point where the lab space was underground, and they would jackhammer to the point where there was, like, ceiling stuff falling down on people's benches, Wow.
Yeah.
So that became a bit much, and I think we were all very excited to move to Berkeley, where it was just, you can walk down the street and it's kind of quiet. That was very nice. And I think in general, we'd all become a little bit more stressed out than we were used to, trying to start a company and be in the accelerator. And this space was kind of calling to us that, oh, we can take yoga classes here, and, we can really concentrate on just being calm, and we thought that would help the company as well.
Yeah, I think when I took a tour of this place, Eben showed me the core values, I mean, on the sign out front, and it really jived with me, and I thought, well, this is a great space. We had looked at some other office space, but it just felt more like kind of the traditional, like, just a big office, and there was no character to it, and so this felt like a better fit, and it's nice being in Berkeley and having the university or right up the street. I mean, that's a great bonus, and so, I mean, now we can go and collaborate and get things done up there. And we were all at Stanford, and we didn't stay there. I think it's mainly my fault because I was moving. I couldn't really afford to live in Silicon Valley, and I didn't really like the culture of Silicon Valley either.
I think you were probably ready to go, right?
So I said I'm moving up to the North Bay because that's where we can afford to live, and so that part of it was also looking at where the three of us all lived and where we could meet in the middle, and Berkeley happened to be right there in the middle too.
Yeah, I live down in Newark, so this is kind of equidistant for all of us, which has been great. And like I said, we hired our first research scientist from Berkeley. We're collaborating with some labs at Berkeley already, and so I went through QB3 Foreman Fund, which has been really great. So yeah, I was like one of 2 Stanford affiliated people in this room, so we'd be like, you know, who's Berkeley? Not me. Sorry, like you just try to keep a low profile.
Hiding your Stanford.
We're all Stanford, yeah, I
sweatshirt.
know. Like, oh my God, but everybody was very friendly. But yeah, we just love kind of being integrated in the Berkeley culture over here, and yeah, it's great. So.
And if you grow and need
There's bigger offices
bigger
here.
space and then bigger space,
I've got my eyes on that nice big office
Yeah.
over there. Yeah.
think you'll stay for a while.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
So we get our Series A, we're going to move to the big office over there.
So I just want to acknowledge what you all said, which is really wonderful to really acknowledge this space. And as we transition to the audience, I just want to say thank you to all of you for sharing your wisdom and your perspective on this journey. And it's really exciting and inspiring to see 3 women creating a company and doing the kind of research that they really want to do to find a solution to some of the problems that we're facing, and to also be in a really supportive space where you can create the work-life balance that you need, take breaks, not be stressed, because it's such a huge part of our journey as entrepreneurs, right? The sustainability.
And we figured out, too, that being an accelerator, yes, you end up being stressed, and the goal is to get a bunch of work done, but actually when you are stressed out, you don't do your best work. So if you can actually take a break, de-stress, you actually are much more focused and get much better work done if you can actually think. So it actually ends up being more efficient down the road if you are in a place that we can actually think straight.
The
makes a huge difference.
scientist is dropping balls of wisdom here.
Makes a huge difference.
Because this is one of those things that flies in the face of logic of so many young entrepreneurs, young STEM people that are all about go, 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 never rest, and keep pushing until you find an answer. And you're basically just telling us, which is just neuroscience, we don't perform well when we're stressed. So I do not get paid as a representative of Co-working with Wisdom, but I do want to just say that this space is so amazing for so many reasons. And one is obviously the physical space, the fact that there's room to do yoga, to stretch, to breathe. Just energetically, when you walk in here, something shifts. And then just to say that the people that work here create a community of support and inclusivity that is really unique and special. So we're all really grateful to have you here at the co-working space, in the co-working space. And
I have to say, Eben was so sweet. I toured this place and 4 other co-working spaces one Friday. I went around all of them, right?
Yeah.
And I emailed him, and I was like, I need a few more pictures, so I forgot to take pictures of the room. And he emailed them back, and he had printed out from our website our logo on a piece of paper and pasted it next to the wall. And I was like, aw, like... just the fact that he had taken the time to you know, this is what it would look like if you moved in here. I'm like, okay, sold. Like we have to move in there.
Yeah.
So
And
those
then-
kind of little things are very consistent. So
Yeah, and then you all mentioned in some way just that deeper core value of why you're doing your research and your deep care about actually making an impact and actually finding a real answer for things. And I think if I had to point to the one core value that probably somebody here asked, like what would be something that is a commonality amongst the people that rent here? And I would say that deeper core value about caring about other human beings, working on solutions that make the world a better place. And so we're just really grateful for all of you for being here tonight, for sharing. And thank you, Curtis, as always, for creating really amazing community spaces for people to come together and share their stories. And I now want to invite the audience to ask a question of the ladies, if you have.
Thank you all for coming, and I really appreciate it. I think you had a lot of really wise things to say about how you've built your business so far. And one question that I had is, as you grow and you're starting to become managers and growing a culture, how are you going to make sure that you do that in a really healthy way that's kind of going to work for a small company and for mid-size, larger? And especially since you've all come from academia, which doesn't exactly have the best reputation for management skills, for
No.
example.
Oh, that's a question. Anybody else want to go?
Yeah, it's interesting that you call out academia. I've seen a bunch of people comment recently that maybe new professors should take some kind of management course, which I think would be a great idea. Because that really is their job, It's one of those things that you spend all this time with pipettes and your computer all the way up through, and then suddenly your job has nothing to do with that. It's all about people. And I think that we all have some experience managing other people, helping more junior researchers, but at least I am not experienced at leading a very large team of people. And so I think growing gradually is something that's going to be very important. And then, I think maybe we should take a management course, even so to make sure that we're managing our people effectively.
I will say, I think, too, is like listening to your team, right? I think I learned very early. So my original style was to sit down on Sunday evenings and go through my to-do list for the week and then fire out a big, long email to these guys. Like, okay, next week we're going to do this and this and this and this. And Katie pinged me on WhatsApp. She was like, don't do that. I was like, what? She was like, I'm trying to sleep on Sunday night, and you spamming me with a list of to-dos for the next week is not helping me. I'm like, oh, all right. Point taken. Never do that again. Right? Like, to me, it was great. It got off my plate, right? But it was like, just, like, that was, so I stopped doing that. It's like listen to how people need to do work. So we've developed other ways to coordinate our activities that don't involve long emails on Sunday night. Oh, here you can go. Oh, there you go.
Well, I have to build a culture of people who want to be scientific revolutionaries rather than conventional academics. So I've been listening to all of you in that regard, and if you have any comments to make on how to build such a thing, I would like it. I can say that the mission of the organization, whatever it's probably large nonprofit network, is to prove Dean Symington wrong. Dean Symington is a psychologist at Davis who's a specialist in genius, and he wrote an article about 6 years in Nature magazine which said, after Einstein, genius is extinct. And his argument was that with science being in large teams, the large teams are going to be too conservative to actually recognize a genius who could make a scientific revolution. He's gotten a little bit more optimistic since then. But anyway, it's essentially, as I told some people, I'm basically working with the theory that will topple string theory and the dogma of reduction to physics at the smallest scale. That's revolutionary, and I need a whole network of people to work with. And my first question is, wait, I developed all this theory completely by myself. How do I go from essentially managing a revolutionary network from basically being an autodidact who works by himself?
So the question is how to encourage just revolutionary thinking in general, or the question exactly?
In practice, how do I find a group of people who are probably postdocs who would love to be part of a revolutionary network rather than part
Where do you find revolutionary postdocs?
That's the question. Yeah. Put up a sign, right?
Yeah.
Banner.
Provide free alcohol? I don't know. I think it's just a matter of networking. I think particularly in the Bay Area, I think you get a lot of postdocs and researchers who are looking to do new and awesome things. So I think actually just going to the departments at the big universities and networking and happy hours and things like that, it's not a bad way to go. But I think in this environment, there are a lot of people who are very open to new and radical things that may not be in other areas of the country. So specifically, I don't know. You guys have any ideas?
Right. No, I've been networking very
Yeah.
heavily at UC Berkeley, but I need to get down to Stanford
Mm-hmm.
and other places.
Stanford, between Stanford, UCSF, and Berkeley. Yep.
Enough people with my current system outreach.
Are you using social media at all to connect with young people in any groups, perhaps, or is that something?
Well, I posted to a couple of groups I knew today, which I sort of not tried because I get bullied and ganged by the conservatives. And it does. And so I went to the American Physics Society Forum, which I've been on before, and had to go to the CEO of APS in order for her to deal with the question of bullying and the breakdown of communication, which she did, but it sort of dissipated the energy. And then I also went to Not Even Wrong, which is the site at Columbia, which is it's essentially where the anti-string theory people, top anti-string people get together and converse. And I looked at what was on there, and there was a very nice conversation going on, for this week's posting. So I, went in there and put my comment in there and saw whether they wanted to. I said, is it any takers here for essentially the idea that physical reductionism is wrong and that's why string theory is failing? So those are my efforts for today, outreach.
And then I think you had a question also.
I just want to say for all three of you, incredibly inspirational, just even talking about your own stories coming to the work that you do, even though I do something completely different. And that kind of goes to my question, as, female founders, as, people who have these incredibly passionate careers that are growing really quickly. You mentioned a couple of things that you've done to kind of take care of yourselves and maintain your own mental health. And I'm curious, in terms of your own self-care, if you could give, women of your caliber or any people of your caliber some just little gems of things that you do for yourself. Part of my work as a health coach is working with high-achieving professional women, and sometimes, you get adrenal fatigue, burnout, people who, they've reached this pinnacle of success, but they're kind of crumbling on the inside, and it's honestly really great to see all three of you. I mean, you're sitting there, you're here, you're physically and it sounds like mentally present, so I'm just curious if you had, maybe a couple of little gems that worked for you or something like a mentor mentioned, just that you could share with other people who might be struggling with that balance.
Yeah, I think all of us are really fortunate in that we have supportive spouses, which has been great. I spend a lot of time with my kids on the weekend. I do tend to binge watch TV at night to relax. So I do the yoga classes here. I'm trying to get better about doing some meditation. You guys are way better than I am. Actually, I need to improve my self-care practice because it mostly involves the binge watching of the TV. But you guys are actually a little bit better.
There's no wrong way to take care of yourself.
It's very relaxing for me. I need to exercise more. But
Exactly.
I'm probably the worst of the three of us. But
Yeah, I think I had a moment of realization as the accelerator was after our demo day, so our last day in the accelerator happened. I think I was suffering adrenal fatigue, and it was weird. It was like my body felt sore, and I felt like I had run 10 miles and I hadn't done anything, and I realized I wasn't taking care of myself. I was just working so hard, and then I kind of realized, well, how can I give my best to my company when I'm not even there myself? And so now I'm thinking, okay, if I have to be my best to give my best to the company, otherwise I'm not really getting much done. So I like to make sure I get enough sleep. That's important to me. I have to sleep enough. And I'm trying to work out, 3 or 4 days a week, because that always helps me de-stress. And then I do read a little bit in the evening, probably about half an hour before I fall asleep. Those are the three main things that really help. But sleep is key. So.
So one thing that's really helped me is to have a rule to try to see one friend every weekend. And part of the reason that it's important is just to smile and laugh with your friend, and that's really helpful. But also some of it is if you're only talking to the people that you see every day that are part of your business, or my husband is also kind of a workaholic, and we tend to just think that our jobs are our entire world and really hyper focus on it and get wound up with anxiety just surrounding that. But if you step outside of it and see someone you haven't seen for a while and, think about the things that are important to them, and, it just helps you take a step back from your own life a little bit more, which I've found really helpful. I don't always get in every weekend, but most weekends I see some friend.
The other thing that I've learned now is I never realized how much I need to be present for my family. So when I get home, I actually put away my cell phone. Because before I would actually be texting, and then I realized, wait, I'm working so hard, and now I'm home and I'm on my phone and I'm checking my email. Why am I checking my email? And sometimes a work email would come up, and I'd get incredibly stressed because I was suddenly trying to interact with my 3-year-old son and answer work, and I realized I wasn't being effective at each one. So I actually put away my cell phone at night now, and that's really helped.
Yeah, I only do work when the kids go to bed. So I end up do a lot of work between like 9 and 11. But one small anecdote, maybe a month after we started the accelerator, I was super stressed. I did something to my back. I woke up one morning, I literally couldn't turn my neck. I was like, I need to go to a masseuse. I had to go to figure this worked out. And that weekend, my in-laws were in town. We ended up going up the coast and just completely unplugged for an entire day, sat on the beach, had muscles up the coast. Came back and my neck was completely better. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna log that. Okay. This was just stress. I hadn't realized I was at stress, but I almost couldn't move my neck, and then I fixed it just by going up the coast for a day. So, so stuff like that.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
You've been very generous with sharing about yourselves. Do you have for us? How can we help you as you embark on this journey?
That's very nice of you. I think we're looking to build community here in Berkeley. They say we're sort of new. We're all Stanford people, so we haven't spent a lot of time in the Berkeley community, but we found it very supportive. And I think we're interested to work with people who want to help companies answer these questions: scaling, hiring, developing a culture. We're trying to develop a healthy culture just amongst the three of us and this person that we've just hired. But we definitely could use more advice in that realm. I don't know what you guys are thinking, but I think just in terms of how do you intelligently start a business and what resources are there too. I'm trying to learn, I'm learning more about QB3 and learning more about the resources that are here, but I don't know all of them. I went to a UCSF Health Hub event last week, so I'm trying to make it to some of those startup events, but I know there are ones that I'm missing. So if there are events that you guys think we'd be good for, then I try to make a lot of them if I can. So.
Yeah, lots of help on the business development side. I think just being the pivoting away from academia, where you just basically do research, and now we're running a business, and so there's lots of little things we need to learn, and we've been learning. But any advice on that is helpful.
We still like each other. So really
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's actually an accomplishment. Actually. Super important. Yeah. Were you guys?
Well,
so thank you for asking. It's very nice of you.
yeah, that is really great. First of all, thank you all for coming. It's really inspiring to see fellow women. That's why I moved here, because I really wanted to be around women who are powerful and interested in doing good things in the world. So it's great to see. And, oh, great. I'm blanking on my question. Yeah, I have no idea what I was going to...
We'll come back to it.
Yeah, anybody else?
Sure. So I'm a scientist, but I came because I was really interested in this being a woman-founded, woman-backed company. But also I came because I thought it was interesting that you selected this place, which is, it's typically a scientific startup. We would try to find a place with lab space and then work around that. Okay. So I'm just kind of like wondering how, when you were looking around at different places, and then the other thing is that some of them want a piece of what you're building, right? And that's also kind of a bit, especially when you're first starting. So when you were considering all of those together, and what made you choose this place, and then secondly, how much time do you spend here versus doing home office work? There's so many different philosophies on whether you can actually work at home.
Oh, yeah.
So,
So I think it's funny. So even in our postdoc lab, I remember we literally had one lab meeting where everybody was remote, including the PI. Like we were all on a Zoom chat, and my husband walked in. He was like, "What is going on?" I'm like, "It's the Bustamante lab. Like we Zoom a lot. It's okay." So we all have this theory that as long as the work gets done, and we don't care where you do it, and we have busy schedules and busy things, and I end up doing work at a McDonald's down the street if I need to be somewhere for something. So, and I will take Zoom calls in my car on the way to some meeting for my kids' school, right? We did get lab space. We're in the QB3. We were looking at lab space in this area because, again, San Francisco, Benicia, Fremont, this worked out really well. So we were looking at Bonneville Labs in QB3, and QB3 was a little bit more economical and had what we needed, so we got 2 benches instead of 1. But they didn't have any open office space at QB3. So the options over there was this really nondescript 80s office tower that was owned by Wareham, which we almost signed a lease, and then my husband, last minute, was like, "Why don't you just take a look at the co-working spaces downtown? It's right next to BART. Just take a day and go check." I'm like, "All right, fine." Yeah, I don't like to think, but a lot of times he's right. So Thursday night, I booked all these appointments and just came around all day, and we work and Regent and the office and all these places. Took a bunch of pictures, sent these guys, and ended up here. But so we have both, and our wet lab person will be there, and Katie will have to figure out a way to go back and forth a little bit. We're thinking about scooters or bikes or something. We'll figure it out. But I mean, we try to all be in the office like at least Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then we pivotally a lot of us work from home Tuesday, Thursday. Like I said, as long as work gets done, I don't care. We're thinking about hiring a computational person. I don't care if that person's in Kansas. If they can, I Zoom with people in Hayward, and I live in Fremont. Like Zooming is Zooming, whether you're whatever. So I don't really care as far as that goes.
And I think the ability to work remotely and the ratio with which you work together remotely is a very personal thing. For me, I like to come in and see everybody around 3 days a week, and that makes sure that I get to see everyone's smiling face. We're all getting along. Yeah, and even just sometimes really casual conversations that I would say like, "Oh, I got this weird result. It's funny." Like I probably wouldn't say it in a meeting over Zoom, but it's just something interesting that I saw, and I make some offhanded comment, and someone else says, "Oh yeah, I saw something just like that." You notice sometimes things that maybe you've been stuck on for a while, you get past just when you're with other people. But then, that being said, I also think when I really just have an objective and I need to work, I should be at home. I get a lot more done that way. People aren't talking to me. If you just need to plow through some analysis, you're better off being at home.
Get work done. I actually, do better sitting at home on my computer, because if you're here, you do get a lot of interactive work done, and that is actually helpful. But then you just need to run an analysis, or you need to write part of a grant. Like you just need you and your computer in a quiet room. So I don't know. But I think, you can't do 100% remote. I think you do definitely get something out of actually meeting together and face to face.
Yeah, and I think one of the things also I liked about this space was the couches out front. I actually have so I do have some weird requirements. Like if I need to write something, I can't be sitting at a desk. I don't know why. I have to sit on a comfy couch when I write, or I have to be at a library. It's psychological. So I saw those couches and I went, okay, I could get some.
I was wondering about that. I did see her go to the couches.
Yeah. So that helps.
I have one more question, which is like a mindset question. I'm sure you're all familiar with Lean In as a philosophy. How do you each feel about it?
I really liked it. I have to say that I think I had both my kids when I was a grad student, so I feel like people assume that if you're having kids that you need to pull back, and I feel like you shouldn't assume that. Like you can get a lot of work done. I'm fortunate enough that I have a very supportive husband, and my parents live locally, so I'm very blessed. I live in a community where I have friends that I can literally drop my kids at the drop of a hat, and they'll take them. So, and that's part of the reason why I'm not planning on leaving the East Bay, because I have this community of people who support me. So I feel like just assuming that you're not able to do the things you think you can do. I was analyzing data when I was in the hospital after giving birth to my first daughter. And I wanted to do that because I don't know, it was kind of boring to sit there in the hospital sometimes. Like I can analyze an Excel sheet while I'm sitting here. Like you can do stuff. People assume that you drop off the face of the planet. I wrote my thesis after my birth of my second daughter. So, but you just don't, if you want to do that, that's awesome. You shouldn't feel like you have to do that. But I liked what I was doing. Like I didn't want to take 3 months off. I wanted to finish my PhD and do stuff. My second one came to my thesis defense because she wasn't in daycare yet. So I breastfed her and then defended my thesis. And it was fine. Like they're happy, healthy, well-adjusted children. So I think it's about having options, right? You could find ways to do it if you want to. You shouldn't feel like you have to. And I have lots of friends who work part-time because they wanted to take off with their kids. That's great. I just am a bit of a workaholic that way. But that being said, like I said, when I'm home with my kids, I'm home with my kids. I don't do work when I'm home with them. So yeah, I think it's just about having options. But I don't know what you guys think about family. I don't know. Did you guys read Lean In? Okay, so you can comment. Okay.
So I can't comment on the children aspect. I don't have any children yet. But I guess, part of the book talks about getting a seat at the table, making sure that you speak up and your ideas are heard. And I definitely agree with that. If you're not speaking up, no one's going to pay attention, no one's going to listen. But just a caveat on that is there certainly are environments where people aren't going to listen to you. I mean, that just happens. I've certainly been in environments where I think I have this great idea, I say it, nobody says anything for a while, and then somebody else says the exact same thing a couple minutes later, and then everyone's like, oh my gosh, yeah, and then they all, and those environments can be very frustrating, and the only thing I can say is just find an environment that is helpful for you and is going to help you grow and help you feel nurtured, because if you're in some place that you're constantly feeling ignored, you're not going to grow into your best self there.
Well said.
Yeah, I guess I do have I think my experience is when I got to Stanford, I definitely had some imposter syndrome and was really lacking in confidence. Like, what am I doing here? And did my advisor really mean to pick me, or maybe it was an accident? And then, so I actually read a book on confidence and building my confidence, and I think it was meant for women, and just all of the stats about, men tend to apply for jobs when they feel 60% ready for that job, or women have to feel 100% ready. And I was realizing, I always have to feel 100% before I'll answer. And most of the time, and then if you give an answer and you ask women, well, how do you feel you did? They'll be like, well, I think I did okay. Maybe they'll think I got 50% right, or men will say, oh, I got 100% of those questions right. And usually, it's like usually in between, everyone got 70% right, but it's just your perception. And so I was sitting there in one of our lab meetings one day, and our advisor asked a lab question, and I knew how to answer it, and I didn't say anything. And then I noticed the rest of the women at the table didn't say anything, and only the men spoke up. And I was thinking, oh, this is so true that we just don't have confidence, and I should be speaking up. And so I started trying to just make a point of it at every time. Like when there was a lab meeting, I said something, or I had something to present, and really just started building my confidence that way. But it took a while to learn how to just even build confidence. But
actually, I want to say something about that, because this is something that really hits home for me. So often when I work with women leaders, women business leaders, they tend to underplay their amazing gifts, how good they are at things. And what I like to tell my clients is, if your purpose on this earth is to make the world a better place and serve other people and do good, and that is your work, get out there and be bold and declare your value and tell people about your work and how amazing you are. And this is some deeper purpose stuff. I mean, we're all here to serve, but if you really literally live day in and day out to find solutions for other people's problems, and that's what you do in the world, then you better damn well feel empowered and give yourself permission to go out and talk about what you do and talk about it with confidence. That is not bragging. That is ensuring that the people out there that need your solution can hear you and find you and get the solutions that you're providing. So that's where it's a mindset shift. When you get out there and you're confident and you're bold and you talk about what you do, it's not about you. It's about your people finding you, hearing and hearing your message and getting what they need. or attracting the people to your movement, to your mission, to your work, so that you can grow it and make the impact that you're meant to make in the world. So for me, it's about how do you just change the whole lens around how you think about talking about yourself, which for some of us can feel funky in the beginning.
Yeah, I was wondering what you've done in order to do exactly that. A lot of women complain about just being ignored, and then when someone of higher status says the same idea, suddenly it's the person of higher status who gets the credit. And this should make you very angry, but at some point you've got to convert that anger into assertion. And of course, I feel the same thing. Because I'm not certified by academia, a lot of my ideas just are ignored because I don't have a high enough status for them to be recognized. And so that makes me angry and frustrated. So that's a problem I also have to overcome.
Do you want me to give you a piece of advice around that?
Yes.
So when you're feeling that your idea is not fully acknowledged or you're feeling pushback on it, how can you get really curious and flip it around and ask that person questions and get really curious with them around what's making it hard for you to understand my perspective, or what about the way that I'm saying this is having a hard time landing with you? Like, always think about how to flip it back to the other person and get them to think about why is it hard for them to acknowledge. So without getting defensive, without needing to feel like you need to defend your point, just get crazy curious with them, you know, and see if maybe they have to do a little bit of thinking and sleuthing on their end about why is it hard for them to hear you or acknowledge your ideas. Yeah, because I'm sure they're valuable. I'm sure they're worth hearing. So.
I was actually going to talk about just your future idea goals of revenue.
Okay. Great. Yeah, so we have a couple of different ideas. Short term, we're looking at doing some deals with pharma. So looking at potentially kind of discovery, R&D, target validation. So can we have kind of external validation in some of our targets, and can we do some early deals around that, but mostly early R&D. And then later on, that could be assets that we develop internally that we might license out. We're also trying to think creatively around value that we're generating within the data that we're building too. That we're building a very valuable database of different types of data sets that other people have not integrated before that can be used for a lot of different purposes. How can we do revenue streams around that? And that's something that we're trying to think a little bit creatively about, because we don't want to give away the platform, but if there's a way to generate revenue from the work that we're putting into it, that would be ideal, but we haven't quite exactly solidified that business model yet, so we are open to suggestions.
Well, I think
around that point.
what I'm hearing is that you're willing to validate and sort of appreciate each piece as an asset, and then that can create revenue, so that's really smart, because sometimes people are too focused, and then there's all these assets, but they're not utilizing them. So it sounds like you're aware of that, which is great.
Yeah, we want to be open opportunities without becoming unfocused. So we do have a couple of sort of high value areas that we're driving toward. At the same time, you said I'm kind of constantly networking to see if there are folks that have assets that are aligned with what we're wanting to do, that we could work together and do that without getting distracted, which is kind of a fine balance. But
Yes, absolutely.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think that'll be our last question. And I just, again, want to say thank you, Ashley, Katie, Linda, for sharing so much of your story and your wisdom. And I think this was really inspiring for all of us. And thanks to all of you for coming and for your questions. And I know that in 2019, Mr. Curtis Carter will have many other amazing opportunities to come out and connect in community with East Bay Startup Foundation and here at CoWorking with Wisdom. So we'll be in communication with all of you about future events, and just thanks again to everyone for coming out and being a part of this event tonight. Thank you, Curtis.
Thank you guys for asking so many questions so many times. It's like, okay, we're going to turn on the audience. It's crickets, you know? Like, you guys are awesome.
Yay, thank you, ladies.
Thank you for interviewing us.
Awesome.